Have you ever wondered what would happen if you walked into a house where every rule challenged everything you believed about yourself? Imagine opening a simple envelope, expecting an ordinary invitation, only to discover a list of rules so unusual that you can't stop reading. At first they seem harmless. Then they become stranger. Then impossible to ignore. Rule number 1. Everyone wears pink. Rule number 2. Every guest chooses a feminine name before entering. Rule number 3. No one laughs at someone trying something new. Rule number 4. Once you enter, you complete the experience before leaving. Most people would throw the invitation away. But curiosity has a strange way of winning. And that's exactly what happened to me. I had no idea that accepting one invitation would completely change the way I looked at confidence, self-expression, and even myself. It all started on a quiet Friday evening. My friend Ethan handed me a sealed pink envelope with a smile that immediately made me suspicious. "You'll either thank me later," he said, "or you'll never speak to me again." I laughed, assuming it was another harmless prank. Ethan loved practical jokes, and after years of friendship I thought I'd seen them all. But this felt different. He wasn't laughing. He seemed genuinely excited. When I opened the envelope, I found a beautifully printed invitation. "You are invited to spend one evening inside the pink house. Follow every rule, keep an open mind, and leave your judgments outside." There was an address. There was a time. There was no explanation. For 2 days I couldn't stop thinking about it. What exactly was the pink house? A costume party? An art project? Some strange social experiment? The mystery was impossible to ignore. Saturday finally arrived. The house looked completely ordinary from the outside. White walls. Small front garden. Wooden porch. Nothing unusual except for one detail. The front door was painted bright pink. Before I could knock, the door slowly opened. A smiling woman welcomed me. "First time?" I nodded. She handed me another envelope. "Read the rules carefully." Inside were 10 simple rules. Respect everyone. No insults. No phones during activities. Everyone participates. Everyone encourages each other. No comparisons. Mistakes are celebrated. Confidence grows through practice. Leave fear outside. Enjoy the journey. None of them sounded dangerous. In fact, they sounded surprisingly positive. She led me into a large living room where around 15 people were already talking and laughing. To my surprise, they came from completely different backgrounds. College students, business professionals, artists, retirees. Some had attended many times. Others looked just as nervous as I felt. Nobody seemed embarrassed. Nobody looked uncomfortable. Instead, everyone smiled as though they had known each other for years. The host introduced herself. "My name is Victoria. Tonight isn't about pretending to be someone else. It's about exploring confidence without fear of judgment." That sentence stayed with me. One by one, newcomers were invited to choose a temporary feminine nickname for the evening. Some laughed while choosing. Others hesitated. Eventually I chose Emma. Everyone applauded, not because the name mattered, because taking the first step always deserves encouragement. Then came the first challenge. Color coordination. Everyone received different shades of pink clothing and accessories. Nothing revealing. Nothing inappropriate. Simply stylish outfits designed to help participants experience fashion from another perspective. At first I felt awkward holding the clothes. Years of assumptions rushed through my mind. What if I looked ridiculous? What if people laughed? What if someone recognized me? Victoria noticed my hesitation. She quietly said something I'll never forget. "Confidence doesn't appear before action. It appears after action." That sentence changed everything. A few minutes later everyone returned wearing their assigned outfits. Something unexpected happened. Nobody looked focused on appearances. Instead, everyone complimented each other's courage. "You look confident." "Great color choice." "Nice smile." The atmosphere wasn't about perfection. It was about acceptance. As the evening continued, each activity focused on communication, posture, kindness, and confidence. Participants practiced walking with good posture, maintaining eye contact, introducing themselves with confidence, giving genuine compliments, listening without interrupting, smiling naturally. At first these sounded like simple exercises, but they revealed something interesting. Most people aren't afraid of clothing. They are afraid of being judged. The clothing simply exposed fears that had always existed. One participant admitted he spent years hiding his personality because he constantly worried about other people's opinions. Another confessed he'd never accepted a compliment without immediately rejecting it. A retired teacher said this experience reminded her how much unnecessary shame society creates around harmless self-expression. Every story felt real. Every conversation became more meaningful. Hours passed surprisingly fast. Then Victoria announced the final challenge. Each participant would stand in front of everyone and describe one fear they wanted to leave behind forever. Silence filled the room. One by one people stepped forward. Fear of rejection. Fear of embarrassment. Fear of failure. Fear of criticism. Fear of not being accepted. When my turn arrived, I realized something surprising. I wasn't nervous because of what I was wearing anymore. I was nervous because telling the truth is always harder. I took a deep breath. My biggest fear has always been caring too much about what strangers think. The room remained completely silent. Then everyone applauded. Not because I had said something extraordinary. Because honesty deserves respect. Victoria smiled. Congratulations, she said. Tonight wasn't about pink. It wasn't about clothing. It was about discovering which invisible rules you've been following your entire life. That sentence hit harder than anything else that evening. Invisible rules. How many of them had I accepted without questioning? How many decisions had I made simply because I worried about someone else's opinion? When the evening finally ended, every participant gathered outside the house. The pink door closed behind us. People exchanged hugs. Some promised to return. Others simply thanked each other for creating a judgment-free space. Driving home, I realized something had changed. Not dramatically, not magically, but quietly. I stood a little straighter. I smiled more naturally. I worried a little less about strangers. The pink house hadn't transformed who I was. It reminded me that confidence isn't something you're born with. It's something you build every single time you choose courage over fear. Months later, I still remember every conversation from that evening. Not because of the clothes. Not because of the color pink. But because complete strangers showed more kindness in a few hours than many people experience in years. Maybe that's the real lesson. Sometimes the biggest transformation doesn't happen when you change your appearance. It happens when you stop letting fear decide who you're allowed to become. And perhaps that's why the pink house continues welcoming new visitors every weekend. Not to change identities, but to help people discover confidence they never realized they already possessed. So if someone handed you the same pink envelope today, would you accept the invitation? Or would fear make the decision for you? Think about that carefully, because sometimes the most unusual door leads to the most unforgettable lesson. The following week, I couldn't stop thinking about the pink house. Every time I looked at the invitation sitting on my desk, I remembered the laughter, the conversations, and the strange feeling of relief I had experienced. It wasn't about the clothes anymore. It was about the freedom of spending a few hours without pretending to be someone I wasn't. 3 days later my phone buzzed. It was a message from Victoria. There is another gathering this Saturday. The rules are the same. But every visit teaches something different. I stared at the screen for several minutes. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Another part was already planning what time I would leave. Saturday arrived faster than expected. This time I wasn't nearly as nervous walking toward the bright pink front door. The moment Victoria opened it, she smiled. I can tell you're already standing taller. I laughed. Is it that obvious? It always is. Inside, I noticed many familiar faces. Some waved the moment they recognized me. Others introduced themselves again, this time using their real names before switching to their pink house names. The atmosphere felt less like an event and more like a family reunion. After everyone arrived, Victoria gathered us in the center of the room. Tonight, she said, we're talking about confidence in everyday life. She handed each of us a small card. On the front was a simple question. What is one thing you've always wanted to do but were too afraid to try? People began writing. Some answered quickly. Others stared at the blank card for several minutes. When it was my turn to share, I admitted something I had never told anyone. I've always wanted to express myself more creatively, but I constantly worry about what people will think. Instead of judging me, everyone nodded. It turned out almost everyone in the room had written something similar. One wanted to learn makeup artistry. Another dreamed of becoming a fashion designer. Someone else wanted to start creating videos online but feared negative comments. Victoria smiled. Fear changes its clothes, she said. But underneath, it's usually the same fear of being judged. That sentence stayed with me. The next activity surprised everyone. Instead of changing outfits immediately, we worked in pairs. Each person had to give the other 3 sincere compliments. Not about appearance.
About personality, kindness, patience, humor, creativity. At first the room became awkward.
Many of us realized we had no problem criticizing ourselves, but accepting genuine compliments felt almost impossible. When my partner told me I seemed calm and trustworthy, my first instinct was to disagree.
Victoria noticed. Rule number 11, she announced with a smile.
When someone gives you a compliment, simply say thank you.
The room laughed. It sounded easy. It wasn't.
One by one we practiced accepting compliments without making excuses. For many people, that tiny exercise was harder than wearing pink. After a short break, everyone gathered around a large mirror that stood against one wall. Victoria explained the final activity before dinner. You'll spend 60 seconds looking at yourself without criticizing anything.
The room became silent.
1 minute doesn't sound very long, but standing in front of a mirror while refusing to criticize yourself feels surprisingly difficult.
Most people instinctively searched for flaws. Too tall. Too short. Wrong hairstyle. Wrong smile.
Wrong posture. Wrong everything. Victoria gently interrupted those thoughts. Instead of asking what's wrong with me, ask what's strong about me.
That changed everything.
When my minute ended, I realized I had spent most of my life looking for imperfections instead of appreciating strengths.
It wasn't a lesson about fashion. It was a lesson about perspective. Dinner was simple but unforgettable.
Everyone sat together around one long table.
Stories flowed naturally.
Some participants shared how attending the Pink House had helped them become more confident at work. Others said they finally felt comfortable expressing their creativity outside the house. One guest admitted that before discovering this place, they had lived almost entirely according to other people's expectations. Listening to everyone, I noticed something important. Nobody claimed to have become fearless. They had simply learned not to let fear make every decision. Later that evening, Victoria gathered us one last time. She placed a small pink key on the table. There is no lock for this key, she explained. It represents something else. She handed one key to every newcomer who had returned for a second visit. When my turn came, she smiled. This key doesn't open a door. It reminds you that confidence is unlocked from the inside.
I slipped the key into my pocket.
Months have passed since that evening. The key still hangs beside my house keys. Most people think it's just a decoration.
Only I know what it really represents.
Whenever I face something unfamiliar, I touch that small pink key and remember a simple truth I learned behind that bright pink door.
Courage doesn't mean never feeling nervous. It means taking one more step even while your hands are shaking.
And sometimes, that single step changes far more than you ever imagined.